At some point today, in the middle of doing something that requires no physical effort, costs you nothing, and carries no risk of harm, you will feel a creeping, restless dissatisfaction with the moment you're in. Not hunger, not pain, not fear, just a vague, insistent sense that this, whatever this is not enough. That something else should be happening. That the present moment is somehow insufficient. You'll pick up your phone, switch tasks, open a new tab, start a conversation you don't particularly need to have. And the feeling will ease briefly until it returns, which it will, because you are, among all the animals that have ever lived on this planet, one of the only ones capable of being bored. And the reason why is one of the strangest and most revealing things cognitive evolution ever produced. No other animal gets bored. This needs the same qualification as everything else that sounds absolute, because animals show behavioral signs of understimulation, and captive animals in particular display repetitive behaviors that suggest something like frustration. But boredom, in the specific human sense, the metacognitive awareness that your current experience is failing to meet some standard of engagement, combined with the restless motivation to find something that does, requires a cognitive architecture that didn't exist before humans. A cow standing in a field is not bored. It is simply in a field. A dog waiting for its owner is not bored in the way you are bored in a waiting room, because the dog cannot hold in mind a model of all the other things it could be doing instead. Evaluate the current moment against that model and find the current moment wanting. That evaluation, the comparison of present experience against imagined alternatives, is the cognitive operation that produces boredom. And it is, like so much of what makes human experience distinctive, a product of the same imaginative machinery that produced everything else worth mentioning about us. Start with what boredom actually requires, neurologically. Boredom is not the absence of stimulation. Sensory deprivation produces something different, a panicked, hallucinatory response to the complete removal of input. Boredom is specifically the experience of stimulation that is insufficient relative to the brain's capacity to process it. It requires a brain capable of operating at a level of complexity that the current environment is not engaging, which means boredom is, in the most precise sense, a signal of cognitive surplus, a symptom of a brain that has more processing capacity available than the current moment is using. And the experience of that surplus, the restless, uncomfortable awareness of unused capacity, is what we call being bored. This reframes boredom entirely. It is not a sign that you are lazy or ungrateful or insufficiently mindful. It is a sign that your brain is capable of more than what it's currently being asked to do. The most cognitively sophisticated species on Earth is also the one most capable of experiencing the particular discomfort of a moment that fails to engage it. Boredom is the price of a large brain, and it is, like most expensive things, also a signal, not a malfunction, a message. The message is find something harder, something more complex, something that uses what you have. For most of human history, that message was easy to respond to, because the environment was genuinely demanding in ways that modern life frequently is not. Hunter-gatherers didn't get bored in the way modern people do, not because they were intellectually simpler, but because their environment made constant cognitive demands. Reading animal tracks, navigating unfamiliar terrain, managing complex social relationships within the group, predicting weather patterns, identifying edible plants from poisonous ones across seasons. The information environment of a hunter-gatherer is extraordinarily rich, constantly changing, and genuinely consequential. Mistakes carry real costs. A brain operating in that environment is fully engaged almost all the time, not because it is entertained, but because it is necessary. Boredom in that context was a rare signal that the environment had temporarily gone quiet, a brief window between demands. Now think about what modern life replaced that with. Not nothing, but something structurally different in almost every relevant way. Environments that are physically safe, socially managed, and cognitively repetitive. Jobs that require the same cognitive operations day after day. commutes that demand almost nothing, entertainment that is designed to engage just enough to hold attention without requiring enough to genuinely satisfy. The modern information environment is simultaneously more saturated with content than any environment humans have ever inhabited, and less cognitively demanding than almost any environment humans have ever actually needed to navigate. The result is a brain that is constantly stimulated and rarely engaged, a brain receiving enormous input and processing very little of it in any deep sense. And the experience of that gap between stimulation and engagement, between input and meaning, is the particular texture of modern boredom that no previous generation of humans experienced at quite this scale or with quite this consistency. Here is where it gets neurologically interesting. Boredom activates the brain's default mode network, the set of regions that become active when the brain is not engaged with a specific external task. The default mode network is associated with mind-wandering, daydreaming, self-referential thought and the kind of loose, associative thinking that generates novel connections between ideas. It is, researchers increasingly argue, the network most associated with creativity, insight, and the spontaneous generation of new ideas. When you are bored and your mind wanders, your brain is not idling. It is doing something specific, running through stored information in a loose, exploratory way that produces connections the focused, task-oriented brain rarely makes. Some of the most significant creative insights in human history were preceded not by intense focused work, but by moments of apparent idleness. The wandering mind is not a distracted mind. It is a mind doing something the engaged mind cannot. This is why boredom, handled correctly, is one of the most productive states a human brain can enter. And why the modern response to boredom, immediate suppression through phone or screen, may be one of the most cognitively expensive habits most people have developed without realizing it. Every time you feel the first edge of boredom and immediately reach for your phone, you are interrupting a neurological process that was about to do something valuable. You are trading a moment of potential insight for a moment of stimulation that costs nothing and produces nothing. The boredom was the signal. The phone was the suppression of the signal. And the insight that would have arrived in the next 2 minutes of staring at the ceiling goes ungenerated forever because you never got there. Your ancestors were bored sometimes. In the quiet between hunts, in the long hours of travel between camps, in the slow seasons when the environment made fewer demands. And in those moments, their minds wandered. They made connections. They noticed patterns. They asked questions that had no immediate practical application. And sometimes, across the slow accumulation of generations, those questions became answers that changed what their descendants were capable of. The wandering mind is not separate from the achievements of human civilization. It is one of the mechanisms that produced them. Every tool that was ever invented, every story that was ever told, every idea that ever moved from one mind to many, somewhere in its history there was a moment of boredom, a brain with nothing urgent to do, running loose through what it knew, finding something it hadn't expected to find. You have that brain. You have it right now, in a world that will offer you approximately infinite ways to prevent it from ever doing what it was built to do. The phone will buzz, the feed will scroll, the next episode will autoplay, and the boredom, the signal, the message, the uncomfortable awareness of unused capacity will be suppressed before it can become anything else, before the default mode network can finish the thought it was starting, before the connection gets made, before whatever was about to arrive arrives. Boredom is not the enemy of a good life. It is, in a very specific neurological sense, one of the conditions that makes a good life possible. Your ancestors knew this without knowing it. They didn't have a choice. They had to sit with the quiet and let their minds go where they went. And sometimes in the going, something came back that was worth having. The next time you feel it, that restless, insufficient, this isn't enough feeling, try something your ancestors couldn't avoid. Stay with it just for a moment. See what the mind does when you stop interrupting it. It has been waiting for a very long time for you to give it the chance.